Admiral Vex Thara of the Hegemony Fifth Fleet felt her chitinous exoskeleton vibrate, as reality itself seemed to tear open before her flagship. The tears in space-time weren't natural. They pulsed with an energy signature that made every instrument. On the bridge, shriek warnings in 17 different languages. "What in the name of the eternal darkness is that?" hissed Commander Kyle Voss, his four eyes dilating as he stared at the readings flooding his console. The answer came not in words, but in the emergence of something that should not exist. A ship, if it could still be called that, phased into reality with the deliberate menace of a predator materializing from shadow. Its hull was a deep crimson that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and its design was both familiar and utterly alien to every species in the known galaxy. "Run spectral analysis," Vex Thara commanded, though her voice carried an unfamiliar tremor. In her 3 centuries of service, she had seen the rise and fall of a dozen civilizations, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Admiral," the sensor operator's voice cracked through his translator. "The ship's configuration, it matches historical records from the archive of lost wars. This is human design, but humans went extinct 12,000 years ago," Vex Thara finished, her mandibles clicking nervously. "The Great Purge saw to that." The crimson vessel hung motionless in space, dwarfing even the massive hegemony dreadnoughts. Its surface was scarred with battle damage that spoke of conflicts beyond imagination, yet it radiated a power that made the fleet's most advanced ships seem like toys in comparison. Then it spoke. The transmission bypassed every encryption protocol, every security measure, every filter the hegemony had developed over millennia of warfare. It came directly into their minds, carried on frequencies that touched consciousness itself. "This is Captain Morden Kane of the human expeditionary vessel Red Rain." The voice was cold, mechanical, yet carried an underlying current of barely contained rage that made every alien present recoil. "We have returned from the edges of eternity to collect what is owed." Vex Thara's command training kicked in despite her terror. "Unknown vessel, you are trespassing in hegemony space. Identify your intentions and prepare to be boarded for her." Words died as the Red Rain's weapons came online. Energy readings spiked beyond anything in the fleet's experience, and the ship's hull began to glow with malevolent patterns that hurt to perceive directly. 12,000 years ago," Captain Kane's voice continued, "your ancestors thought they had purged humanity from the galaxy. They were incomplete in their efforts. The Red Rain's main cannon, a weapon that seemed to bend space around, itself began to charge. The sound it made was like the screaming of stars as they died. We are the survivors. We are the forgotten. We are the ones who learned to weaponize eternity itself, while you grew fat on the bones of our dead worlds." The transmission carried with it images, glimpses of humanity's final stand, the orbital bombardments that had turned Earth into a tomb, the desperate evacuation ships that had fled into the unknown darkness between galaxies. "And now, Captain," Caney concluded as the Red Rain's engines began to pulse with increasing intensity, "we have returned to remind the galaxy why they once feared the sound of our name." The first shot vaporized 3 hegemony cruisers before their crews even realized death had come for them. Captain Morden Caney stood before the tactical display in the Red Rain's command center, his augmented form more machine than flesh after millennia of survival in the void between galaxies. The neural interface implanted behind his skull pulsed with data streams as he absorbed the tactical situation unfolding before him. "Status report, Commander Yathara," he said to the figure emerging from the shadows beside him. The woman who had once been human turned to face him, her skin bearing the distinctive silver scarring of quantum fold enhancement. Half her face had been replaced with crystalline computation matrices that glowed with internal fire. 17 hegemony vessels destroyed, Admiral. Their remaining forces are retreating to the Kethvar Nexus. Estimated time to full fleet assembly, 6 standard hours. Caney's expression remained impassive as he studied the retreating alien fleet. The hegemony, descendants of the very species that had orchestrated humanity's genocide, still fought with the same arrogant presumption that had once driven them to believe they could simply erase his people from existence. They had been wrong then. They would be catastrophically wrong now. Signal the Wraithborn fleet, he commanded. Begin Phase 2 of the Crimson Protocol. Throughout the Red Rain's vast corridors, other figures began to move. They had once been human, but 12 millennia of survival in the hostile void had transformed them into something far more dangerous. Some bore cybernetic enhancements that allowed them to interface directly with the ship's weaponry. Others had undergone genetic modifications that let them survive in the vacuum of space itself. All of them carried the same burning hatred that had sustained them through their long exile. In the ship's war room, Chief Tactical Officer Zarlin Voss spread her forearms across the holographic display, each hand manipulating different aspects of the battle plan. Her species had been one of the first to ally with humanity in the old days, before the Great Purge had consumed everything. Now she was one of the few non-human survivors aboard the Red Rain, her loyalty bought with shared suffering and a common thirst for vengeance. The hegemony's calling in reserves from 7 sectors, she reported, her translator converting her native clicking language into standard human speech. They're mobilizing everything they have. Good, Caney replied, his augmented voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull. The more they bring, the more we can remind them of what they've forgotten. The Red Rain's sensor arrays, enhanced with technology that bordered on the mystical, reached across light years to monitor the enemy's movements. The ship itself was a testament to what humanity could achieve when pushed beyond the brink of extinction. Its hull incorporated materials that existed only in the deepest reaches of interdimensional space. Its weapons drew power from contained singularities that had been harvested from the deaths of stars. Sir, reported Lieutenant Kathan Nix from her station, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The news of our return is spreading faster than their containment protocols. Caney allowed himself a grim smile. Fear was a weapon as potent as any plasma cannon, and the mere existence of the Red Rain was already destabilizing the careful order the hegemony had built on humanity's grave. Let them spread the word, he said. Let every species remember what happened the last time they decided humanity was too dangerous to exist. The tactical display updated as new contacts appeared at the edge of the system, not hegemony vessels, but ships from a dozen different species, all of them descendants of civilizations that had participated in humanity's extermination. They came not as allies but as scavengers, hoping to claim the technology of the legendary human ship for themselves. Caney's laughter was a sound like breaking glass and dying suns. Commander Ythara, prepare the Phantom protocols, if they want to see what human technology can do. His eyes glowed with the same crimson light that pulsed through the Red Rain's hull. Let's show them why their ancestors chose genocide over coexistence. The hunt was about to begin in earnest. Deep within the Red Rain's core, in chambers that had not been opened for 10,000 years, Captain Caney walked alone among the monuments to the dead. The memorial vault stretched for kilometers in every direction, its walls lined with quantum-crystallized memories of every human world that had burned in the Great Purge. Each crystal pulsed with captured moments, children playing in Earth's final summer, lovers embracing as the orbital bombardments began, desperate transmissions from colony ships that had tried to flee to the galaxy's edge. The weight of 11 billion souls pressed down on him like a physical force. I kept my promise, he whispered. To the memorial wall, his augmented hand touching the crystal that held the last moments of Terra Nova, humanity's first successful colony world. I brought us home. Behind him, footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. Commander Ythara approached, her crystalline implants dimming respectfully in the presence of so much concentrated grief. The hegemony fleet has assembled at Kethvar, she reported quietly. 2,000 vessels, including their newest dreadnought class. They're calling it the largest military mobilization in galactic history. Caney turned from the memorial wall, his expression unreadable. And the others? 17 species have sent representatives to the Hegemony Fleet, the Velthari Dominion, the Crystalline Republics, the Hive Mind Collective, all of them united by their fear of what we represent, as they should be. Caney began walking toward the vault's exit, passing beneath archways carved with the names of extinct human cities. Have you accessed the archive records from their transmissions? Yes, sir. They call it the Alliance of Species, a formal coalition dedicated to containing the human threat, once and for all. Yathara's voice carried a bitter edge. They are using the same rhetoric their ancestors used 12,000 years ago. They emerged from the memorial vault into the Red Rain's primary corridor, where crew members moved with the efficient precision of those who had trained for this moment across centuries. Each face bore the same expression of grim determination, the same hunger for justice that had sustained them through their long exile. In the ship's archives division, senior historian Rexhan Vul worked frantically to decode intercepted hegemony communications. The insectoid being had been one of the few alien scholars to oppose the Great Purge, earning himself a place among the human survivors. His compound eyes tracked multiple data streams simultaneously as he unraveled the enemy's tactical plans. "Captain," he announced as Caney entered the archives, "I've discovered something significant. The hegemony isn't just mobilizing their military. They're activating the nullification protocols." Caney's augmented spine stiffened. The nullification protocols were theoretical superweapons, designed specifically to erase entire species from existence at the quantum level. They had been deemed too dangerous to build, even by the genocidal architects of humanity's extinction. "They mean to finish what they started," Yathara observed, her tactical implants already calculating the implications. "Then we'll have to finish it first." Caney moved to the central display, his neural interfaces connecting directly to the ship's vast database. "Rexhan, show me everything we know about their current leadership structure." The holographic display filled with faces, alien dignitaries and military commanders who bore the genetic legacy of those who had ordered humanity's extermination. Supreme Admiral Clivex of the Hegemony, whose great-great-grandmother had, personally, overseen the bombing of Earth's last cities. Chancellor Thymos of the Velthari, descendant of the beings who had hunted human refugees through the Outer Rim territories. Each face was catalogued with meticulous detail, their fears, their weaknesses, their genetic lineages traced back to the architects of genocide. The Red Rain's crew had spent millennia preparing for this moment, studying their enemies with the patience of those who knew they would have only one chance for justice. "They believe they've evolved beyond their ancestors' mistakes," Caney said, his voice carrying the weight of prophetic certainty. "They think their advanced technology and superior numbers will be enough to contain us. They don't understand what we've become," Yathara agreed. "What survival in the void has made us." Caney's augmented hand clenched into a fist, and for a moment, the air around him shimmered with barely contained energy. "They're about to learn that when you try to erase a species from existence, you'd better make sure you succeed completely." He turned to address the assembled crew members who had gathered in the archives, their faces illuminated by the glow of ancient human technology and alien stars alike. "The time for hiding is over. The galaxy will remember why they feared us." The HFY Nexus had become the largest military staging ground in galactic history. 2,000 warships from 17 different species hung in perfect formation around the ancient space station, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire star systems. At the center of this armada, the Hegemony's newest flagship, the Extinction's End, pulsed with weapon systems designed specifically to counter theoretical human technology. Supreme Admiral Clivex stood on the bridge of his massive dreadnought, his 6 arms manipulating multiple command interfaces, while his primary eyes focused on the tactical display. Around him, representatives from the allied species maintained a careful distance, each one secretly calculating how they might claim the greatest share of human technology once the Red Rain was destroyed. "Status report," Clivex commanded, his translated voice carrying across the bridge. "Long-range sensors show no sign of the human vessel," reported his tactical officer. "It's been 17 hours since they destroyed our patrol fleet." "They're waiting," hissed Chancellor Thymos of the Velthari, her crystalline form resonating with barely contained aggression. "Humans always preferred psychological warfare to direct confrontation." "Not these humans," Clivex corrected grimly. "The survivors who fled beyond the galactic rim. They've had 12,000 years to plan their revenge. We cannot underestimate what that kind of focused hatred might have created." As if summoned by his words, reality began to fracture around the edges of the assembled fleet. Space itself seemed to bleed crimson as dozens of tears appeared simultaneously throughout the formation. The red rain didn't emerge from a single point. It manifested from everywhere at once, its massive hull phasing into existence between the Allied ships like a predator materializing in the heart of its prey. But it wasn't alone. Alongside the crimson flagship, smaller vessels began to appear. Ships that bore the same reality-warping technology, but were clearly of different origins. Some were sleek and angular, bearing the hallmarks of pre-purge human engineering. Others were organic, their hulls grown rather than built. A few seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, their edges blurred with quantum uncertainty. "Impossible," breathed the collective's drone representative. "Our records show no other human survivors." Captain Caney's voice echoed across every frequency simultaneously, his words carrying the weight of an executioner's pronouncement. "Did you think we were the only ones who escaped your genocide? Meet the Shadow Fleet, every species you failed to completely exterminate, every survivor who found refuge in the void between galaxies." The tactical display erupted with new contacts as more ships continued to phase into reality. The HFY remnant, whose crystalline vessels had been thought extinct for 8,000 years. The Phantom Brotherhood, a collection of AI consciousness that had fled into digital exile. The Void Shepherds, whose bioships had adapted to feed on dark matter itself. All of them united by one common purpose: the systematic dismantling of the galactic order that had tried to erase them from existence. "Open fire!" Clivex screamed, his command echoing across the Allied fleet. The battle that followed defied every tactical doctrine in the galactic military archives. The Allied fleet's weapons, designed to counter known human technology, proved useless against ships that had evolved beyond the constraints of normal physics. The Red Rain's main cannon tore through dreadnoughts like they were made of paper, while the Shadow Fleet's exotic weapons turned entire formations into quantum. But the true horror began when the first Allied ship was boarded. The Red Rain's assault troops were no longer entirely human. They moved through vacuum without life support, their bodies adapted to survive in the hostile void. Some phased through hull plating like ghosts, while others simply tore through reinforced bulkheads with their bare hands. When they reached the bridge of the Hegemony cruiser Final Judgment, the alien crew found themselves face to face with beings that represented humanity's ultimate adaptation to survival. "Please," gasped the ship's captain, his translator struggling with languages that had been presumed extinct. "We surrender. We..." The lead boarding team commander, a being whose name tag read Lita Commander Velthis Morningstar, tilted her head with predatory curiosity. Half her skull had been replaced with quantum processing arrays, while her left arm ended in a weapon system that drew power directly from subspace. "Surrender?" she asked, her voice carrying harmonics that made the alien's exoskeleton vibrate with instinctive terror. "Your ancestors didn't accept our surrender 12,000 years ago. Why should we accept yours now?" The execution was swift, efficient, and broadcast across every communication channel in the Allied fleet. It was a message written in blood and broadcast in terror. The age of galactic peace built on humanity's grave was ending, and this was only the beginning. The news of the HFY massacre spread across the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum-entangled communication networks that had once been humanity's gift to galactic civilization. In less than 6 hours, every major species knew that their worst nightmares had become reality. Humanity had returned, and they had brought friends. On the capital world of the hegemony, emergency sessions convened in chambers that had not been used since the Great Purge. Ancient protocols were activated, and weapons that had been locked away for millennia were brought back online. The galaxy's leaders faced a truth they had refused to acknowledge for 12,000 years. Their genocide had been incomplete. In the depths of space, the Red Rain hung motionless among the debris of the Allied fleet. The Shadow Fleet had dispersed to strike at targets across 17 different sectors, each attack carefully calculated to maximize both strategic damage and psychological impact. The galaxy's military infrastructure, built on the assumption that no force could challenge the established order, began to crumble under coordinated assault. Captain Caney stood in his private quarters, staring out at the wreckage of 2,000 warships. The room was spartanly furnished, containing only the essentials needed for survival and the weapons required for war. On his desk lay a single object from the old Earth, a photograph of his family, quantum crystallized to preserve. Across the millennia, the hegemony is calling for total mobilization, Commander Yathara reported as she entered. Every species in the galaxy is being asked to contribute ships to a new alliance fleet. Let them come, Caney replied without turning from the viewport. How many responded to the call? All of them. Even the normally neutral species are choosing. Besides, the Zendari Collective, the Ethereal Conclave, the Machine Dynasties, they're all pledging ships to the anti-human alliance. Caney finally turned to face her, his augmented features reflecting the crimson glow of his ship's hull. And our own forces? The Shadow Fleet has grown to over 300 vessels. More survivor groups are making contact every day. Species we thought were extinct. AI collectives that hid in quantum dimensions. Even some groups that evolved beyond physical form entirely. Yathara paused, her crystalline implants processing new data. Captain, there's something else. We're receiving transmissions from human colonies. For the first time in decades, Caney's expression showed genuine surprise. That's impossible. All human colonies were destroyed in the Purge. Not all of them. Yathara activated a holographic display showing star charts that extended beyond the galaxy's mapped edges. Deep cover colonies established by the most paranoid human explorers. Generation ships that were already beyond the galactic rim when the Purge began. Hidden enclaves that went completely dark and stayed that way for 12,000 years. The display showed dozens of signals, each one carrying authentication codes that dated back to the early days of human space exploration. Colonies that had survived by cutting all contact with galactic civilization, living in complete isolation while they watched their homeworld burn from afar. They want to join the war, Yathara continued. Some of them have been preparing for this moment. For millennia. Their technology. Captain, some of these colonies have had 12,000 years to develop without any outside interference. They've created things that make our ship look primitive. Caney absorbed this information with the calm of someone who had learned to expect the impossible. How many? At least 47 million humans across 63 different colonies. And that's just the ones responding to our signals. There could be more. The implications hit Caney like a physical blow. For 12,000 years, he had carried the weight of being humanity's sole survivor, the last guardian of their legacy. Now he learned that millions of his people had endured, had thrived, had spent the same millennia preparing for the day when they could return to reclaim what had been stolen from them. Signal all human forces, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just realized he was no longer alone in the universe. Begin Phase 3 of the Crimson Protocol. It's time to remind the galaxy that humans don't just survive extinction, we evolve beyond it. In the depths of space, ancient human shipyards that had been hidden for millennia began to reactivate. Colony worlds that had spent 12,000 years perfecting the art of war started launching fleets that defied conventional understanding of physics and firepower. The galaxy had thought it was facing one ship crewed by the ghosts of the past. Instead, it found itself confronting an entire civilization that had spent 12 millennia becoming something far more dangerous than anything that had ever existed in known space. The real war was about to begin. 3 months after the HFY massacre, the galaxy burned. The Grand Assembly Chamber on Hegemony Prime had become a war room, where desperation masqueraded as strategy. Holographic displays showed crimson markers spreading across the star charts like a plague, each one representing a system that had fallen to human forces or their Shadow Fleet allies. The assembled representatives of 43 species maintained the facade of controlled discussion while terror gnawed at their souls. "The Outer Rim territories have gone completely dark," reported Intelligence Director Morthak, his 4 eyes unable to focus on any single disaster. 17 sectors, 400 billion civilians, all under human occupation. Supreme Admiral Clivex, now the de facto military leader of Galactic Resistance, gestured to the tactical display with movements that betrayed his exhaustion. "They're not just conquering, they're converting. Every system they take becomes a forward base for producing more of their reality-warping ships." "It's worse than that," interjected Chancellor Thymos, her crystalline form dim with despair. "The psychological warfare is destroying morale faster than their weapons destroy our fleets. They're broadcasting historical records, showing every world what really happened during the Great Purge. The broadcasts had been the cruelest weapon of all. Detailed recordings of humanity's final days, preserved in quantum crystal and transmitted across every communication network in the galaxy. Civilian populations that had grown up believing the official narrative, that humans had been a threat to galactic peace, now witnessed the truth. Orbital bombardments of defenseless cities, the systematic hunting of refugee ships, the cold calculation with which an entire species had been marked for extinction. Some worlds had surrendered immediately upon seeing the recordings. Others had experienced civil wars as populations turned against the governments that had participated in genocide. The political structure that had maintained galactic peace for 12,000 years was collapsing under the weight of its own crimes. "Status of project nullification?" Clivex asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. 37% complete, replied Chief Weapons Designer Velkoth, but the humans seem to know about our progress. They've been specifically targeting our research facilities. The truth was worse than what Velkoth dared say aloud. The humans didn't just know about project nullification. They were systematically dismantling it, while simultaneously demonstrating weapons that made the theoretical superweapon look like a primitive firecracker. The latest reports described human ships that could erase matter at the quantum level, others that moved backward through time to attack targets before they could defend themselves. Meanwhile, in the depths of space beyond the galactic rim, Captain Caney stood before the largest assembly of human beings in 12,000 years. The hidden fleet had grown to encompass over 10,000 vessels, ranging from massive world ships that housed entire colonies to single-pilot fighters that existed partially outside normal space-time. The assembly took place aboard New Terra, a ship so large it had its own weather systems and gravity wells. Around him, representatives from 63 human colonies shared the same expression of grim satisfaction. They had spent millennia preparing for this moment, and now they were ready to show the galaxy what human ingenuity could accomplish when motivated by righteous fury. "The enemy is developing a quantum-level genocide weapon," Caney reported to the assembled fleet commanders. "They call it Project Nullification. It's designed to erase entire species from existence, not just kill them, but remove them from the timeline itself so they never existed at all." The reaction was immediate and predictable. Voices raised in anger, demands for immediate retaliation, calls for the complete extermination of every non-human species in the galaxy. Caney let them vent their fury before raising his hand for silence. "Our response will be measured but absolute," he continued. "We've spent 12,000 years becoming something beyond their ability to destroy. Now we show them what that means." Admiral Synthera Voidwalker, commander of the Outer Colony Forces, stepped forward. Her ship, The event horizon had been modified with technology that allowed it to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The deep colonies have finished construction of the reality anchors. We can prevent their weapon from affecting the timeline. And our offensive capabilities? Caney asked. Commander Nixon Entropy-born, whose body had been so heavily modified that he was more energy than matter, pulsed with barely contained power. The quantum storm generators are ready for deployment. One ship can sterilize an entire star system. Not just the planets, but the space between them. Leave nothing but vacuum so perfect that it becomes a wound in reality itself. Caney nodded slowly. The weapons they had developed were terrible beyond imagination. Tools of such destructive power that using them would fundamentally alter the nature of existence itself. But the galaxy had made its choice 12,000 years ago when it decided that humanity was too dangerous to live. Begin the final phase, he commanded. Show them what they created when they tried to make us extinct. The order went out across the hidden fleet, carried by quantum-entangled communication systems that bypassed every form of interception or jamming. Human ships began moving toward their targets, not the outer rim territories they had been conquering, but the core worlds of galactic civilization itself. The galaxy had taught humanity a lesson in extinction. Now humanity was going to return the favor. The Battle of Galactic Center lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, the political and military structure that had dominated the galaxy for 12 millennia had ceased to exist. The hegemony's core worlds lay in quantum ruin, their very atoms scattered across dimensions that conventional physics couldn't describe. The great space stations that had served as symbols of galactic unity were now monuments to the price of incomplete genocide. Captain Morden Caney stood on the bridge of the Red Rain as it hung motionless above the ruins of Hegemony Prime. The planet's surface flickered between dimensions, caught in a temporal loop that would replay its final moments for eternity. Around him, the massive human fleet spread across the star system like an ocean of crimson death. Casualty reports, he requested, though his voice carried no satisfaction in victory. Commander Yithara consulted her tactical displays with mechanical precision. Enemy forces, complete annihilation across 47 sectors. Civilian populations, approximately 4 trillion confirmed dead, with an additional 2 trillion displaced to refugee camps. The numbers were staggering, but Caney felt no sense of completion. Vengeance, he had learned over the millennia, was a hunger that could never truly be satisfied. The dead of Earth would not return because their killers had joined them in extinction. And our forces? Minimal losses. The reality-warping weapons proved effective beyond our projections. Yithara paused, her crystalline implants processing data that made her voice hesitate. Captain, we're receiving surrender transmissions from over 300 species. They're offering unconditional capitulation. Declined, Caney replied without hesitation. Any species that participated in the Great Purge forfeits the right to exist. Any species that remained silent while we were hunted forfeits the right to negotiate. Sir, interjected Admiral Synthara from her flagship, her voice carrying across the quantum communication link. We're also receiving transmissions from species that weren't involved in the original genocide. The Zendari Collective, the Ethereal Conclave. They claim neutrality and request safe passage out of the galaxy. Caney considered this for a long moment. The hunger for vengeance that had sustained him across 12,000 years of exile warred with the strategic mind that had kept humanity alive in the void between galaxies. These species had been neutral during humanity's darkest hour, neither helping nor hindering the genocide that had consumed his people. They will be given one chance, he finally decided. Any species that can prove it actively oppose the Great Purge will be permitted to evacuate beyond the galactic rim. They have 60 standard days to present their evidence and begin their exodus. And those who cannot prove their innocence? Caney's expression remained unchanged as he watched another hegemony world flicker out of existence, consumed by weapons that unmade matter at the subatomic level. Extinction. The word hung in the air like a death sentence pronounced upon the galaxy itself. In the weeks that followed, the Great Migration began. Species that had dominated galactic civilization for millennia packed their most essential belongings and fled toward the dark spaces between galaxies, following the same desperate paths that human refugees had taken 12,000 years earlier. Some fought the inevitable, marshaling their remaining forces for final battles that lasted minutes before human weapons reduced them to quantum dust. Others attempted to bargain, offering technological secrets or promises of eternal servitude. All received the same response: silence followed by annihilation so complete that it erased them from the historical record itself. But it was in the aftermath, as the galaxy lay broken and empty, that Captain Caney faced his greatest challenge. Standing in the memorial vault aboard the Red Rain, surrounded by the crystallized memories of his extinct species, he felt the weight of absolute victory crushing down upon him. "The last enemy stronghold has fallen," Commander Yathara reported, from behind him. "The galaxy is ours, Captain." "No," Caney corrected, his voice barely above a whisper. "The galaxy is empty. We've avenged the dead, but we've also become what they tried to destroy us for being, a species too dangerous for the universe to contain." He turned from the memorial wall, his augmented features reflecting the soft glow of preserved human memories. "Signal the hidden fleet. Begin phase final, the restoration protocol." What followed was perhaps the most ambitious project in galactic history. Human colony ships began spreading across the devastated star systems, carrying terraforming equipment and genetic samples preserved from before the Great Purge. Worlds that had been scarred by exotic weapons were slowly healed, their atmospheres rebuilt, their ecosystems restored. But this was not mere terraforming. It was resurrection on a cosmic scale. Using technology that bordered on the divine, human scientists began the process of bringing their extinct homeworlds back to life. Earth itself, transformed into a tomb by orbital bombardment 12,000 years earlier, began to bloom once again as quantum reconstructors rebuilt its biosphere from archived genetic data. The galaxy became a monument to human determination, not just the determination to survive, but the determination to create beauty from ashes and life from death. Cities rose on worlds where only ruins had stood, and gardens grew in the vacuum of space itself, sustained by technology that made flowers bloom in starlight. Yet even as humanity spread across their reclaimed galaxy, they did not forget the lesson written in blood across the cosmos. Memorial worlds were established where the extinct alien species were remembered, not celebrated, but acknowledged as examples of what happened when civilizations chose genocide over coexistence. Captain Caney, now Admiral of the restored human Republic, stood once more in the memorial vault as the Red Rain orbited the reborn Earth. The crystallized memories of the dead still glowed with their stored sorrows, but now they were joined by new crystals, recordings of the first human, children born on Earth in 12,000 years, their laughter echoing across the same ground where their ancestors had died. "They tried to write us out of history," he said to the memorial wall, his words carried by quantum resonance to similar vaults on 1,000 different worlds. "Instead, they taught us to write history in our own blood." The galaxy was silent, now, except for the sound of human voices raised in songs that had not been heard for 12 millennia. It was a silence bought with the extinction of entire civilizations, a peace purchased with the complete annihilation of those who had chosen war. History would remember this as the age when humanity learned that some lessons could only be taught in blood, and some debts could only be paid in the complete and utter extinction of those who created them. The Red Rain sailed on through the cosmos, no longer a ship of war, but a guardian of memory, carrying the story of what happened when a galaxy tried to erase the most dangerous species it had ever encountered, and failed to do the job completely. In the end, the universe learned a simple truth. When you try to commit genocide against humanity, you had better make sure you succeed, because if you fail, they will remember, and they will return. And when they do, history itself will be written in blood.